Speaking of which, Anthony Albanese's job is to keep all Australians safe. His election campaign catchphrase is, "I've got your back." I'm not sure many Jews would be feeling Albo's got their back when he waited, as Liz said, almost 5 days before showing up at the Ripponlea Synagogue in Melbourne. And, the fire lasted longer than Albanese's visit. In fact, his tennis game lasted longer as well. But show up he did. He didn't exactly get a warm reception.
Are you worried about move back, guys? Move back. Are you worried yesterday was the first time.
You can hear there people saying, "You're late." He certainly was. And, of course, have a look at this. People had not forgotten his tennis match.
Come on, guys, move back, please. Stay for tennis. Come on, guys, push back, keep going. Move back.
Now, Albanese did a quick tour of the synagogue. Then he made a short statement to the press, took no questions, and then disappeared for I think he had a private meeting with some of the leaders there. One of the things he said in his brief statement to the media, he said, "We're a country that needs to come together and unite." But it's funny, Joe, with Labor, they've got the PM, right, at the synagogue. Yep. This is the biggest thing in the country right now. We've got to come together and unite, he says. At that very moment, you've got Ed Husak, one of his senior MPs, on Sky News saying, "What about Islamophobia?" I mean, now, I'm not saying Islamophobia shouldn't be something that's abhorred as much as anything else, but you're not talking about Islamophobia when you've got your Prime Minister on his much-delayed visit to the synagogue. At the same time, you've got Penny Wong in South Australia comparing Israel with China and with Russia. At the same time, you've got Murray Watt suggesting that Josh Frydenberg was only really upset about the firebombing at the synagogue for rank political purposes. If Anthony Albanese is serious, we've got to come together and unite as a country. Maybe talk to your senior team about coming together and uniting and deciding this is the key issue in the country right now without having them all freelancing with one eye on votes in Western Sydney, trying to walk both sides of the street.
I think it is a problem. I think there's a couple of things. I think Murray Watt, who I like, but they were pretty silly comments. Josh Frydenberg. It
was worse than silly. That was disgraceful.
Josh Frydenberg's parents were Holocaust survivors from Hungary. The reason why they couldn't find his previous citizenship is because his parents had fled for their lives.
And has Murray Watt apologised for that comment? I think not.
I think we don't need to sort of get into who has to walk the walk of shame and stuff. But again, I think it's pretty silly. Penny Wong's statements were obviously clearly unhelpful, and I think it's pretty clear that Penny Wong has a conventional left-wing view of the Israel-Palestine debate. I think that is part of the problem in the Labor Party, that you have people, and I think, honestly, I genuinely believe that the scales are falling from Albo's eyes and he's starting to realise just how much of a white-hot issue this is and how dangerous
the proof of
anti-Semitism is. Well, he's he's meeting with the Jewish leaders now. He's appointed an anti-Semitism counter-terrorism task force within the AFP, so there are things that he's done.
After Peter Dutton said he would do that.
That's right. And again, late, sure, but better late than never. And these are things that, under another type of left-wing leader would simply not have happened. So I think he is doing that. Ed Husak, obviously, you can understand that as a Muslim himself, he is going to be someone with very strong community ties and I suppose sort of, ideological ties with the Palestinian cause in the Middle East. I don't really mind that so much. It's perfectly natural that he would think about that. But again, the reason I made that massive point earlier about the huge and really sinister scope of anti-Semitism right throughout history and just how absolute and enormous in its scale and horrific in its outcomes has been, that just simply has not happened to any other group of people. And it's very weird that people, I think, see anti-Semitism as a more benign form of racism or not as serious as real racism towards other ethnicities, when in fact that is the only thing for which an entire race, an entire ethnicity, an entire ethno-religious group has been attempted to be wiped out across the entire world. That was the Nazi project. And it's not just the Nazis. Again, this is all sorts of groups for all sorts of reasons, following all sorts of conspiracy theories, wanting to just completely wipe these people out. Now, of course, Islamophobia exists. Of course, other forms of racism exist. And there's been horrible things done to other ethnic groups. But there is, I think, a really special and specific case with Jewish people that has never throughout history applied on such a scale and with such venom and with such absolutism and with such deadly force as it has to them. So again, when you're talking about things that are happening in Melbourne and Sydney, you know, the firebombing of a synagogue, the smashing of, you know, shop windows, these are the things that happen on Kristallnacht. These are the things that happened in the middle of the rise of Nazi Germany, again, and people kept sort of sleepwalking to their own destruction. And so I think when people are talking about that and saying these are the anxieties that we are feeling as a people because we're seeing the same things happen that our grandparents told us about, to then say, oh yeah, but what about Islamophobia? Not sure if that's really getting it. I'm not sure if that, you know, and I'm not sure if it's particularly helpful.
Well, I'm not sure that what Albanese had to say in part of his speech today indicates that he's getting it either. Get this. So he's there. He is finally at the synagogue, at the scene of the crime, at the scene of this terrorist attack. And he decides to tell people there, standing in the rubble of their place of worship, how wonderful multiculturalism is. Let's read this in The Australian. Amid chaotic scenes, Mr Albanese told community members Australia's multiculturalism and social cohesion had to be nurtured and protected. Quote, he said, it's one of the most wonderful things about this country is you can live in Australia and experience different cultures, different faiths, beliefs, and be enriched by which is why we have to cherish it, why we have to nurture it. I felt like this added insult to injury. Firstly, that Jewish community is far more gracious than I would have been. I don't know that I would have let him come, much less invited him to come. There's been plenty of Palestinian and other mosques, etc., say in Western Sydney, that just stopped inviting MPs to all of their important events because they were like, sod it, you're not supporting us. We don't want you showing up for your photo ops. Get on your bike, thanks very much.
This comes after the firebombing, but then after the firebombing, on Sunday, we had here in Sydney bunches of men out on the street chanting, "Oh Jews, the army of Muhammad will return." If that's what Anthony Albanese means by the enrichment of diversity, and incidentally, I looked through all the papers today trying to see, is there any follow-up on that? Police said they were investigating yesterday, there was no news on it today, and I suspect it'll be one of those things that will be swept under the carpet and disappear.
That's so Islamophobic of you, James. So Islamophobic of you.
Yeah, well, that's what they say to shut everyone up, isn't it?